Should be more. There's more,
there should be more. There should always be more. Yeah.
Oh, God. So, yeah. It's fascinating. It's my new favorite show. I love it.
New favorite show.
Mm-hmm.
You know what else is my new favorite show?
What's that?
Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to Pixel It. And if it sounds like we're extra excited, it's because we are. We actually have not recorded in a month and a half.
Yes, we went on a little break.
We went on a little break because Phil Dunn got hitched, and we wanted to. Oh, look at that ring! And we wanted we built up a bank of episodes. Yep. If you couldn't tell by how out of date the "What Are We Playing" segments were.
Right. Because we noticed. So I'm sure
like, oh yeah, I'm playing a game that and at the time it would have been new, and then it was like 6 months ago or something like that. So yeah, we banked up a lot. Right? Yeah, Cult of the Lamb. Everybody moved on from Cult of the Lamb.
I know.
Yeah, no, we had banked up a ton of episodes over the summer just so Phil we could take a little break. Phil took a break. He got his matrimony on. It was a lovely wedding.
You were there.
Phil cried. I cried. It was all good.
It was a very cry wedding, but
very cry.
Damn,
lot of
was
crying.
it a good time. We had fun.
It was a good wedding. And while Phil was getting married and basking in the glow of that, I recorded another podcast with our friend of the show, HotCyder. It's called Bullet Time. Go ahead and check that out. That's out now.
You recorded like a dozen episodes too, didn't you?
Recorded, so I recorded personally, I want to say about a dozen episodes, and I'm not the only co-host. There's two other co-hosts on the show.
It's a fucking machine over there.
And they're going to be getting their stuff recorded very shortly. So yeah, if you're looking for a podcast with, people like Evelyn from I Am Error or Aronach, or Willow from Questing Refuge, or Jacob Geller from the YouTube channel.
Fucking Geller.
Jacob Geller is going to be on there. Tesnecker is one of the other co-hosts. Rasputin was on there. It's a good show. A lot of
friends of the pod. It's fantastic.
A lot of great people on that show, and Jesse Garasha, who has also been on. He's been on the show twice, our show twice. So yeah, check out Bullet Time. But yeah, on the show today, we're starting a brand new series. Brand new
book.
Brand new book.
Like
literally brand new. As of when this episode comes out, it'll still have only been out for a couple weeks.
Right. Like, I don't know what's going on with us. Usually we're reading books that were written in like 1986 or some damn thing. And now we did Halo, the Rubicon Protocol, which just came out.
Yeah, we did two brand new books towards the end of the year here. And the book that we're talking about today, the series we're starting, is Dark Souls, Masque of Vindication, written by Michael A. Stackpole, who is a tried and true pulp sci-fi and fantasy author. He's done a whole bunch of stuff.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so Dark Souls, in case you guys don't know what Dark Souls is that I don't know how that happens.
I don't know. I don't know how that
happens. Not sure how you can miss that, because Dark Souls became the most common comparative game for a spell there in the 2010s.
Oh,
like absolutely. It's the Dark Souls of such and such. So Dark Souls, it's a game made by From Software. It was the follow-up to a game called Demon Souls. From Software is an old Japanese video game company. They've been known for things like Armored Core, King's Quest. Demon Souls and the Dark Souls series is kind of like a spiritual continuation of the King's Quest games. They're most notable for
King's Quest?
Not King's Quest. King's Field.
King's Field. Okay, I was about to say, what?
No, sorry. They're not King's Quests.
King Graham in the land of From Software. Oh my God.
King's Field. It's been a few months. I'm going to have to shake off some of the rust. But yeah, King's
we're
Field.
WD-40ing it.
A little WD-40 on that. King's Field was a first-person action RPG And Demon Souls and Dark Souls are third-person action RPGs, and they're known for their punishing difficulty and the common refrain from gamers everywhere to just get good.
Get good.
My personal take, I don't find the games that difficult. They're a game that you have to. It's just something that you have to kind of learn how to play, like the way that the game wants you to play. Anyway, that's a whole nother discussion about difficulty.
To remind everyone at home, I couldn't get past the first level of Bloodborne, so
that's true. But I think Bloodborne is harder than Dark Souls in some regards. So Dark Souls. It's been everywhere for over a decade now. The most recent game in the FromSoft Soulsborne series just came out earlier this year, called Elden Ring, and massive open world game, but with all the Dark Souls goodies that we have come to know and love. So that's basically Dark Souls. It's there. It's out there.
And this is its first ever novelization, yeah?
This is the first ever novelization. There was a graphic novel that came out in 2016 with the release of Dark Souls 3.
Okay.
By Titan, who are the same people who did the Bloodborne graphic novels, and also the Assassin's Creed graphic novels. This is a company
right there. God damn.
Phil, why don't you tell us a little bit about who Michael A. Stackpole is?
Oh, Michael A. Stackpole. Here's another OG in the geek pantheon. Michael Stackpole is a game designer. He is a writer. And he was actually a very important figure in the Satanic Panic of the 1980s. He got a name for himself among many geeks as being a guy who was writing on the regular against organizations like Bothered About Dungeons and Dragons Bad, which sounds like kind of a walking punchline. And nowadays it kind of is, but in those days people were taking it very seriously, thinking that people playing Dungeons and Dragons was they were going to kill themselves and get lost in the steam tunnels beneath their school and all that stuff. People like, me who wanted very badly to play D&D, but my mother wouldn't let me because of all of the urban legends she'd heard surrounding it. Stackpole became very well known for writing on a pretty regular basis about why D&D wasn't just not a bad thing, but it was a good thing, and it was good for you, and it was fun and encouraged adventure and play and stuff that growing kids need. In the meantime, he wrote a few books. You may have heard of a couple of them. He was the founder of the X-Wing Rogue Squadron series. He wrote X-Wing Rogue Squadron in 1996, which led to a huge spin-off of Star Wars stories, novels mostly. And he wrote a lot of really important BattleTech books. He wrote the Dragon Crown War series, a lot of stuff, Dark Conspiracy, Mech Warrior stuff, and a lot of novelizations. One of the more recent ones, he wrote the novelization of the 2011 Conan the Barbarian movie that came out with Jason Momoa in it, which I saw in the theaters and was not very good. But it was, but I will say this for that movie. It knew what it was trying to make. It was not trying to be, as Lord of the Rings as it could have been. I thought they were going to be leaning hard into more of the Tolkien-esque kind of aspects of it, trying to grab those. No, they were like, no, we know who Robert E. Howard is. We're gonna make a big campy, dumb fantasy movie, and they did. I need to watch it again. I haven't seen it since. I take Conan very seriously, but
you are a Conan fan.
I like myself a Sumerian. What can I say? Stackpole's still very active today. Obviously, as this project shows, it kind of a very big deal. to be asked to write the first novelization of such a huge and dare I say it, important with a capital I franchise.
Yeah.
So, it makes sense that they'd want to entrust it with an old grognard of the old school fantasy world.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, so that's the game, that's the person. So we're gonna jump right into the story and kind of work our way through it. So we read the first 13 chapters for this episode, and we're gonna start off in chapter 1. The book is told in a first person perspective, and our primary character is waking up from death. And this is going to sound like I'm dunking on the book. This is probably the most interesting part of the book.
Yeah.
And maybe that is a dunk. We'll reserve the that for later, but it's a very interesting segment where this undead, and that's what they're called in the Dark Souls averse, is the undead, wakes up and he has to remember things like being able to touch things, being able to move his hand. He remembers he isn't able to see until he remembers the concept of sight.
Yeah. And we get a lot of cool inner monologue stuff.
A lot of really cool inner monologue stuff. And he wakes up and discovers that he is basically in a chamber, in a mausoleum, and there appears to have been a thief at some point who broke in to rob the grave. But because of the height from which the ceiling that the thief fell down, the thief landed and then ended up not being able to get back out of the mausoleum and dying. And then he basically continues his inner monologue. He questions the thief, the dead thief, who then wakes up, and he struggles with this thief and remembers his magic, and he casts a spell and blows the head off of this undead thief that attacks him.
It's a very generic sort of magic, isn't it? I wanted to ask you about that.
Yeah, it is. There is some spells that are basically like your very basic level spell, and I don't remember what they're called in Dark Souls specifically, but they
do have specific names, don't they?
They do have specific names. Yeah, the lowest level caster spell, one of the lowest level caster spells, at least in Elden Ring, and I haven't played a caster in Dark Souls in a long time. It's basically like a magic missile type thing where it's just like you're shooting a little pew.
Right. Because he kind of, and you will see this, at least in this first third of the book, you see it a lot where he just kind of says, it's kind of like, I used magic to destroy the enemy. I used magic to blow his head off.
Yeah.
It's not like I cast a fireball.
No, and it's like a blue glowy that melts things kind of and does force damage, but also cooks things, as we find out later. Yeah. Burns things. So not very specific on the magic. He's able to get out of the tomb. He looks at basically there is a seal on the tomb that is preventing him from leaving. There's like a magic in place that prevents him from leaving his tomb. So, but he realizes he can go down below it and get out through that. He is able to sneak out through an opening that prevents him from being caught in the magic field.
Right.
He goes up and around, and he sees that there's a name on the outside, and he assumes that this is his name, and it's Ferranos.
Yeah.
And he's like, all right, I'm Ferranos.
Yeah.
Cool. Moving on. Let's
Yeah.
Let's remember some new stuff.
Yeah.
We get some really neat descriptions of the land, the desert lands that he's in, which is very evocative
Mm-hmm.
in some points of Dark Souls where you have these. That's the thing about Dark Souls is the 3 games are set in it's like post-apocalyptic fantasy.
Right.
Like, things are not going well in any Dark Souls story. things are going pretty bad. So he is continuing through this desert, and he comes across a man sitting by a fire, and you guessed it, this is a bonfire. This is the bonfire that hollows and the undead are they aggregate around, and they're attracted to just like sit down, and doesn't necessarily give out warmth, but it kind of comforts them.
Mm-hmm.
So he talks to this man who's sitting at the bonfire, and the guy's been sitting there so long with his legs crossed that his legs have kind of like fused together.
Yeah, I thought that was a really cool detail. Like he'd been there for that long, and it was like because he says he talks a little bit about he had the option of going out and going out and fighting and seeing the world and that sort of thing. But after a while, he just didn't think it was worth it anymore, so he decided to just have himself sit down, and he's been that way for like hundreds of years.
It's a long sit down, and he actually Ferranos notices that the guy has this instinctual urge to continue to feed the fire, but there's nothing, he's not feeding it anything. He's just like grabbing an invisible pile of sticks and throwing it in. And this guy's like on a looping animation.
Right. It absolutely, we've talked about this on several episodes in the past where you have to wonder, you're like, all right, how much of this was this person just playing through the game and like writing about things they saw? And that was one of the first ones that there was a part of that was like, did he just watch? It feels like watching an NPC.
Did he watch an NPC just kind of loop through an animation a bunch of times?
Like, that's a fun idea. Let's do that.
That's a fun idea. So Ferranos decides to go. He's being pulled in a direction. There's a supernatural urge for him to just go, and he's going. And the guy's like, well, the door's right there. It's that Rick and Morty scene. We're like, well, I'm leaving.
That was always allowed.
That was always allowed. So Ferranos leaves, and he goes down a set of stairs, and he's like in this underground, like, it's not like a cave system. It's like a buried fortress that he's walking through. And he gets killed, and it becomes Groundhog Day at this point. Yeah. So he dies, and he wakes up next to the fire that he just rested at. And the guy's like, oh, you're back.
Yeah, it is a pretty great moment where it's just like, hey, how'd that go? That sucked, huh?
That was terrible, right?
Now you see why I've been sitting here all this time.
So he keeps doing it. And one of the things that keeps getting mentioned by Ferranos is that he doesn't really notice the passage of time. So we don't actually know how long he is doing this, but he is dying over and over again to, is it traps? Is it whatever? It's a group of soldiers down there. He's dying over and over again. And eventually he gets kind of close. And finally the guy at the fire is like, oh yeah, well, this might help. And he gives him a flask, and it's never called the Estus flask, but that's what it is. It's the Estus flask, which is the thing that heals you in the games. The guy's like, and Ferranos is like, I could have used this earlier, and the guy at the fire is like, So
it's such a like Calvin's dad moment from Calvin and Hobbes, where he's like suffering builds character, fucker.
Building character. Ferranos is Calvin, and the guy at the fire is Calvin's dad.
Right, exactly. If you guys take away nothing from this, know that is the perfect analogy. That's it.
So he goes, so he goes and he kills, it's this group called the Lost Patrol.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't really matter. They're just a group of dudes down there. And he gets down there. He's able to kill the Lost Patrol, and he continues on, and he gets into like this like valley area, and keeps going through. He runs into a town, and the town looks like it's been, demolished. There's graffiti or whatever, and he kills a couple of hollows, and he finds a coin. Finds a few coins, but he finds one that looks older than all the rest. And on it is the word Panir, which brings back like a memory to him. He knows something of what Panir is. By the way, every time he kills a hollow, he is absorbing their soul essence. The soul's mechanic is built into the book.
and I think he handles it well. I think Stackpole does a good job with he gets a little trace memory from everybody that he kills. He sees like a brief moment in their life and absorbs it. And it's not really, it shouldn't mean anything to him necessarily, because even though he doesn't remember his own past, but he's getting all of these memories from all these other creatures. It's kind of cool. Like, is that something that's baked into the mythology in Dark Souls at all, or is that new?
That the memories? No.
Yeah.
No, I think no. It's just souls are a little bit different than. I feel like there is no. However, Miyazaki considers the soul in Dark Souls, it's a little bit different than like the essence of a person. I think there's like a separation between, like, the soul is like an animus. It's like a thing that moves the flesh,
right?
And in that, it's power. It's not necessarily memory. Also, it's just the power, the animus that actually moved this sack of meat that we call a body.
Right. So it's not like he's not like becoming more like them, but it's kind of like the old folklore of like eating an animal's heart to gain its courage or something.
Sure. Thing. Yeah. And you're getting contact traces of, like, in the game, I don't think this is ever really brought up, but it is a neat little wrinkle in the book that in the book, it's like, oh, you're getting some contact traces of who this person, the last person who touched this soul, you're getting some trace elements of who they were.
It's a really interesting touch.
Yeah, it is. So he continues on, and there's only one way forward. He knows where he has to go, and there's only one way forward, and that is down into an arena where there is a gigantic man with a is it a mace? I think it's a mace.
It's a mace, yeah. I'm sure people have picked up on it. I do not play Souls games. I'm not any good at them. They bring me no joy. But I am kind of fascinated by that. I was excited to read this because the creatures and the landscapes that are in these From Software games are fascinating to me. And even though I've never fully played one of these games through, I can say for certain that this upcoming moment is like the most stereotypical Souls moment in the book so far.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's just a big boss guy who just sits there and waits for him.
He's waiting for you. It feels very similar. There is a boss in Dark Souls 3 named Udex Gundyr, who is basically this gigantic armored man he's kneeling down in the center of the arena. And the first thing you do is you go up to him, and there's a sword in his chest, and you rip the sword out of his chest, and that wakes him up.
Of course. Yeah. I mean, what else? Yeah, of course. That would wake anybody up. Sure. Absolutely.
And he fights you, and he is, you fight him in the first 7 minutes, of Dark Souls 3.
I mean, that's probably what inspired this then.
Yeah. So he dies a bunch to this dude.
Yeah. He dies, and I love how he describes it, where it's like he's like just standing there like a statue, hands on his weapons, waiting almost politely for him to show up and start the fight again. He's not pacing, he's not doing anything but just waiting for the next guy to step in so he could kill him.
Right. Yeah. So he gets back to the He gets back to he did light up a new bonfire nearby. He gets back there, and this time, after the last time he dies, he wakes up and there is a knight standing there with his sword pointed at Ferranos. He's like, you good? Do I have to kill you? And Ferranos is like, no, I'm good. And Ferranos remembers the guy's sigil. Mm-hmm. That he is a knight of the Knights of Virtue. His name is Crotha, Truth Teller.
Good name. Another good D&D name.
A good D&D name. Basically, the virtue that he abides is the truth.
Yeah.
In all things, he doesn't lie. He hates lies, and in that he also hates rumors and gossip, because they are not necessarily the truth. So he doesn't play in rumors and gossip.
Just lawful good paladin.
He is a lawful good paladin. That's him.
Easy peasy.
Easy peasy lemon squeezy. Now with Crotha, who is also in the same spot where he's like, oh, I woke up and I have this vibe where I got to go that way. And Ferranos is like, well, there's a dude in the way. And Crotha's like, bro, now there's two of us.
Yeah. It's like fucking Game Grumps, like playing Dark Souls. Just waiting for a second player to come in.
And then they go and they fight, and he basically jolly cooperation. That's what it was called in Dark Souls. There's a character called Solaire who calls it jolly cooperation when you work with somebody. They fight and they take down this dude with the mace, and they get a big old rush of soul energy, and it blows their hair back, man.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's chapter 4. And Crotha is like, he's a little bit I don't know, I don't want to call him boring, but he's a little boring.
He's
for
a
character.
He's a real square.
He's a real square. We got to get some darkness coming out of this dude, because so far he's like, eh.
Well, it's like we've got 2 Nick Carraway characters, basically.
Oh, yeah.
We got 2 very vanilla kind of sort of characters, because neither of them know what's going on, really. They're both going. So introducing him doesn't, at this point at least, bring too much to the table.
Right. Yeah. So chapter 5. We're picking up now in chapter 5. And they're just walking, and they have no idea how much time is passing. They're walking. Yeah. There's lands. They would kindle bonfires as they go. Sometimes they would find people, but humans, the actual living people, are like staying way clear of because they look, even though they are not hollows, they are just, it's like there's 2 levels. There's just undead, and then there's hollows. Yeah. Hollows are basically undead that have lost every bit of humanity that they had, and are just mindless creatures doing, whatever.
They're revenants.
Undead are just are very much like regular people. They're just, in a corpse.
Right. Like Mitch McConnell. It's
like Mitch McConnell.
Think of that. You got it.
Hey, we're back, baby.
Yay!
We're back.
You guys fucking missed it.
Fucking Mitch McConnell and all of his goddamn turtleneck piece of shit.
Oh, it feels good to be back, bitch.
Feels good. Whew. So they go. They find a fortress, a tower, basically. They see some graffiti about a land called Trafarm, which they are putting together. It's a beautiful faraway land. Yada yada yada. Yeah. They don't remember yet, but Crotha is from Trafarm. That's going to get revealed in a little bit. And they get jumped by some goons. They while they're crossing a swamp area, they're fighting some hollows.
Mm-hmm.
They win.
Yeah.
I mean,
the fights,
the most interesting. They don't strike me as any.
No.
There's no stakes to the fights right now because, in something that is really good for a game, the coming back up out of the bonfire, there's like no stakes to any of these fights so far. It's like, because they're just gonna be able to try it again,
right?
So
it's kind of where we run into our first roadblock in terms of this being an adaptation. Because on one hand, like I said before, that's kind of cool. Like being able to work that into the book in such a way. I liked the idea of working. It's like, okay, well, you died and you show back up and gaining these souls and learning memories. There's something really interesting about that you could totally see. You're like, okay, as a book that works. But yeah, it eliminates pretty much all the fear of death. So the fights lack.
Yeah, so you can't. That's the thing is, I feel like if you do not focus on the fights as a set piece,
right,
it's more of a matter of fact thing rather than just like the focus really needs to be on the internal struggle of what this shit means,
right,
rather than an external struggle of like, oh, we died, I'm back up again. And I mean, in this case, they don't die. Ferranos loses his foot though.
Mm-hmm.
He blows his own goddamn foot off
because of a crocodile.
because a crocodile clamps onto it, and he sticks his. It's kind of a cool moment, but still, he sticks his staff down into the crocodile's throat, and he blasts it with his magic. It's
the Dark Souls Florida DLC.
I was Florida happy to see DLC
it represented here.
Yeah,
it was good.
So he kills the crocodile, but he loses his foot along with it, and Crotha has to basically carry him the rest of the way that they're going. They basically find a pyramid, this like temple structure. And we are in chapter 6 now.
Yes.
And they find a sarcophagus inside. And this is kind of so there's a puzzle that they solve here, right?
Yeah.
And I guess it's fine, but also feels like a D&D campaign, like the DM was stressing for a puzzle and just needed to throw one in, because it's not like a very interesting puzzle to watch these characters solve,
Right. And I wanted to ask you about that. Are puzzles really a thing in Dark Souls, or
no, not a big thing? Because
it made me think, and maybe you'll agree, it made me think of the Resident Evil adaptations.
It's closer to a Resident Evil puzzle than anything you would find in Dark Souls.
Yeah, it's such an odd choice. But I guess it was a choice to vary up things. But yeah, puzzles, I don't think of puzzles when I think of Dark Souls. And this won't be the only one.
No. So they have to basically figure out that there are these dreams kind of swirling around the sarcophagus.
Yeah.
And they have to, Crotha ends up being the one to do it. He has to like step on certain squares while a dream is in a certain area. He has to like match his emotion to the dream in order to proceed further into the magic field.
And if he does the wrong emotion on the wrong square, Lady Dimitrescu pops out of nowhere and cuts his fucking head off.
Yeah. That's basically it.
Yeah.
Heisenberg shows up and says, "You boulder punching moron."
Yeah. I gotta play that game again.
Yeah. No, the DLC's coming out.
I know.
Or came out when this episode airs.
Oh, yeah. I guess it'll be out by now. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's cut this short and no.
So he figures it out. There's like some stakes where there's a wolf, and the only stakes are inconvenience at this point.
Yeah.
Because like, oh, well, if I die, I got to fight all the way back here, which is like, okay.
Which is the same as playing the game.
Which is the same as playing the game, but the game has actually additional stakes, because if you don't get back to the point at which you died, you lose all the souls that you had not already like banked into your character yet.
Right.
So you have to do a corpse run first. You have to actually get back to where you died. So they in the book though, that's been completely stripped away. Now it's just you just have to get back to where you were.
Right. So yeah, so it's actually even lower stakes.
It's even lower stakes than in the game. We've reduced the stakes.
Right.
This is Dark Souls easy mode. Yeah. That you've been asking for.
No wonder everyone was so pissed. I'm sorry, toxic fanboys. You were right. You were right all along. I didn't know.
I didn't know. So he solves it. He gets there, and now he has to. But now that the fields, basically this field was healing them and healing both Crotha and Ferranos, that now that it's dispelled, now they solved the puzzle, the guy in the sarcophagus is now dying because there's no air in there. It was keeping him alive. Yeah. So they're like, oh shit, hey, enter some stakes. Now they have to figure out how to open this sarcophagus. And
I'm sure they come up with like a really elegant, thoughtful solution to doing that.
Yes.
Right.
He hits it with his sword until it breaks.
He just hits it, and it's not even his idea. Fucking Ferranos has got to be like, hit it a bunch.
Bash the shit out of it, and he does, and it's just like, and it crumbles, and
and it works.
And it works, and they're like, oh well, now he's just like a little sleeping baby. So we're gonna let him sit here.
His way through the puzzle.
We're gonna let this guy sit here. So yeah. Okay. That's basically the start of chapter 7, where they figure that out. Yeah. And they're like, all right, well, we have a real human now that needs food, so we got to go get some food. So they're out there. They find the parts of the crocodile that he killed.
I love this because it might be the most gamer moment in the entire book, where it's just like, I killed a guy a few screens back.
Let's go raid his corpse.
And
he finds his old foot.
That's right. It's such a fucking like,
and he just discards it into the swamp.
It's so meta. It's so weird. And they're like, well, do you think he'll like, how do I cook this? He goes, I'm pretty sure I wasn't a chef in my former life. And he goes, well, do you think he'll eat it? And it's like, I don't know. I don't know what living people like. It's so bizarre. It's so weird.
It's so weird. And so they spill out some blood, and it pulls into some it's like chiseled out stuff on the ground, and it spells out a name as the blood pools.
Yes.
And the name is Balerion. And they're like, maybe that's this kid's name. So they go in, and just by speaking the name Balerion, it actually wakes the kid up. Right. And he's like, oh, yes, no, that is me. That is I, Balerion. And they start kind of like deducing what they know. And at this point, like, okay, Balerion might be the son of the king, King Panir, who was from a real long time ago, eons ago, from what we can tell, because it was on the oldest of the coins that Ferranos found, right?
And also Ferranos also like can tell that a long time has passed based on the stars or something like that.
Yeah,
like
that's actually that is a cool detail that I forgot to mention, is that the memory of the stars that he gets from the thief is different from the position of the stars in the sky when he looks into the night sky. And he can tell that the stars are in different positions. He says degrees by degrees. Right. And the things that he knew as planets at one time some are no longer there. Some have changed colors, things like that. So I was like, that was a really neat detail.
It's a really cool detail, and it could have gone into anything really, but it's neat that it was used. It's used kind of to tell us a little bit about Ferranos in the past, like
who he is. Yeah, he's like because he says to himself, "I clearly knew a lot about astronomy and astrology at one point." Like that was
He's some kind of cool tower mage kind of character, and he used to be, and it's a clever way of getting to know him, and it's a clever way of getting to know that like a shit ton of time has passed.
Right. They kind of figure out that Balerion, I wouldn't say figure out, but they're surmising that Balerion might be the bastard son. Actually, he says he's the bastard son.
That's like, it's like kind of how he announces himself.
He's like, "Hi, I am Balerion, the bastard son of King Panir."
It's a random detail.
Good to know.
Hi, I'm Phil Keeling. I'm allergic to walnuts. You're like, what? We just met.
Are you allergic to walnuts? I was like, I feel like I would have known that.
No.
You look like a walnut eater.
And if I was, I wouldn't give the internet that information.
That's a good point.
That's between us. Oh, wait, did you just say I look like a walnut eater?
I'm just saying, you look like a guy who enjoys walnut occasionally.
What kind of Dickensian insult is that?
Look at over there, those walnut eaters.
These walnut eaters over there. I'll trounce them good.
Scrooge with his pipe. It's like the week before Christmas, and he's like walking up and down the street and like, those walnut eaters over there.
I suppose you'll be wanting Christmas off, Cratchit, you walnut eater.
You walnut eater.
He says, now you can't call us that anymore. It's a different time.
It's a different. There's laws. Yeah. There's laws. Like so he throws like a walnut at his head.
Yeah. It's like it's like racist against the Welsh or something like that.
It's a good old English racism right there that we are inventing. I will say
the best English, the best racism is the English racism.
Is the 19th century English like Londoner racism against just like somebody who's from like 10 miles up.
Yeah. Just racism that is just covered in chimney soot. Just absolutely.
Chimney soot walnut eater.
Just the best.
You chimney soot bespotted walnut eater. How dare you?
Now I want walnuts. God damn. How did that happen?
Yeah. So
that's going in my profile, by the way.
Good.
Walnut eater.
Known to eat walnuts. Known to enjoy a walnut or two at the end of a long day.
Now and then, yeah.
Now and then.
Strictly medicinal.
Medicinal walnut card. So they continue on. They continue talking. Basically, Balerion got there because a couple of the other Knights of Virtue put him there. Yeah. Their names
slowly drugging him.
They slowly drugged him over the period of a month until he lost consciousness for over 1,000 years.
Yeah. I've heard that one before too, Balerion. Get a lawyer.
Balerion. Been there.
Balerion.
When I woke up, it was It was 11:15 when I fell asleep. The year.
Call the police.
Call the police. So yeah, he gets drugged for over a month, and then he gets shoved into our sarcophagus, and there he was. And to Balerion, it was basically a day. He had been asleep for one day. To him, from his perspective,
right.
He's like, "Oh, I had a good night's rest." And Ferranos and Crotha are like, "Buddy,
good / bad news."
Good / bad news. They take him outside, and he's like, "Oh my god." The lands that he once knew as like nice, nice. They weren't bad. They were nice,
right.
Are now bad. These are bad lands. Things. It really reminds me of, there's that tweet about where somebody wrote a fake opening monologue to Dark Souls where it's like things fucking suck and are real fucked up, and only you, the fucked up little guy, the most fucked up little guy of them all, can unfuck them.
That's pretty much it. Like, that's basically what we're dealing with here. It's just multiplayer now. That's all. Yeah,
it's just multiplayer. So they're thinking, they believe him that he's probably the kid, Panier's kid. Mm-hmm. And they continue on. Oh, I hear a kitty cat. Is that?
Yeah, they're demanding. Hold on, god damn it, fucking cat! I swear to God, this is gonna be a regular part of the show. I swear. Like, let the cat in.
Let the cat in the office.
All right, come on.
Their cats are coming in. Here they come.
Oh.
Are they just standing at the door, or are they coming in? We'll see. Oh, there's a kitty. Oh my gosh, there's a big old kitty.
Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Lieutenant Ellen Ripley, Jennifer Garner, Stockton Keeling.
Oh my gosh, she does not want to be involved.
No, I just said open the door. That was all I wanted.
Yep, she left.
Yeah, she's gone. She's gone now.
She's gone.
Yeah.
So yeah, they continue on, and they have, they start getting some more memories back.
They kind of like basically infer, based on who they found, that like they're there to help his dad, like the king somehow, right?
Yeah, like Balerion is feeling a similar pull eastward that they were feeling to go get Balerion in the first place.
Right.
Which is something Dark Souls-y, where usually the undead have a quest, but I'll get to that in a little bit.
Yeah.
So yeah, the Ferranos goes hunting. He blows up a couple rabbits.
Yeah, he does. Good. I like they point out that like he shoots one of them directly with his magic, and it points out he's like, now while the pieces of meat that are left behind are very well cooked, it
won't feed anyone.
Yeah, no one's gonna eat that. Yeah.
The other one he hits the ground next to it, which causes it to fly into the air and then brain itself on a rock. And
which is
not
also
quite
hilarious.
Dead.
On top of everything else.
Not quite dead yet, so Ferranos has to beat it against a rock until it does die.
Dark Souls.
Dark Souls. The Dark Souls of hunting.
Of rabbit hunting. Yeah.
Of rabbit hunting. Yeah. We get into some like stories that Balerion tells about how there were these wise men that always stopped by his village, and Crotha's like, I kind of call bullshit on this as a thing that should have been normal.
Right.
Like, wise men wouldn't have gone to just a random ass village. And also there's this old man who is like, would come and tell stories, and he would go by the name of Parneus.
Parneus. Yeah.
He would go by the name of Parneus, and he would tell these stories about these 3 baby wolves who he told one story about a wolf who fucks over a village of sheep. Sure. And then he tells another story about a wolf with 3 kids.
We get like 2 long-winded folk tales in a row.
Yeah, it's very long. It's wild. We get 2. The first one, I was like, okay, well, don't trust a wolf. All right.
Right, sure.
We knew that. And then the second one is like, the wolf and his kids are real fucked up. They're real fucked up kids. And it's going to be another kid that's going to come in and save the day. And then he winked at Balerion, and Balerion never understood why that was.
Yeah.
So again, Balerion goes like, the guy who went by Parneus, and Croth is like, whenever the king would write poetry, he would always use the name Parneus.
Yep. What a coinky dink.
What a coinky dink. Which I didn't write notes for this section.
Right.
But if I did, I would have wrote dumb as
it's a little dumb. It's
I'm sorry. This is super dumb. This whole section. It's like, oh, you guys, Michael, sweetheart, you're trying way too hard here to lay some track.
This is where I started to notice just how much of our Dark Souls book was dialogue.
Yeah,
like
a lot of
pages upon pages of dialogue. It's just them telling things to each other back and forth constantly, and that's how we're getting the bits and pieces of exposition.
Just whispering little sweet nothings to each other.
Right.
Like, hey, Crotha, I maybe I was a servant when I was. Right. And Crotha's like, that's cool. I was a knight. And Ferranos is like, yeah, I know.
I got it.
You're wearing your armor that you died in.
Right.
Crotha's like, yeah.
And I guess I respect, not sitting down and just writing 50 pages of like all the lore and mythology in a row like some fantasy authors like to do, but it's this really is where it starts you start to see fully fledged how kind of it's getting a little clumsy. The writing is getting yeah. In chapter 10, they continue on their merry way. They get fucked up by Ferranos gets fucked up by some cacti. Vicious cacti. Vicious cacti. They're like sentient cacti. They swing at you. And then they encounter a group of people called the Yatka, who are very hostile. Yes.
At some point, Ferranos dies at some point, and he gets booted back to the last bonfire. And he sees, when he comes back, he sees like, oh, well, Crotha and Balerion have made some progress clearly, and they went into this cave area. And now remember this: he goes in through the cave, and there's just hostile enemies everywhere, and he's just like, he does a lot of damage.
Right? Yeah.
The best thing about this scene happens later. So this is in chapter 11, by the way. They find themselves in a chamber at the back of this cave, and there's a woman kind of standing in the same glowing field that Balerion was in, and at some point, Ferranos says to Crotha, I'd be like, oh yeah, maybe we can get some stuff from the people that were living in the cave. And Crotha goes, looks in the cave, and is basically like, what the fuck did you do?
Yeah.
And Balerion, because Balerion killed all of them, and Balerion just responds, they were hostile.
Right. Just like, I had to. They were jerks.
There were these jerks. I had to kill all of them.
Yeah. Ferranos did the killing.
Crotha's like, what did you do?
Yeah. It's like they were jerks.
Yeah.
If you played one of these games, I have.
You gotta kill. You just kill the people. You don't bother.
I'm not making a lot of friends here.
It's like 1 in 10 that 1 in 100 people that you can talk to. So just swing first, ask questions later.
Yeah.
So the woman that they find is Philicina. Let's go with Philicina.
Philicina makes
she's
sense.
one of the knights, and her virtue is fidelity, which is so if Crotha is truth, she is fidelity, and fidelity in this case means she honors the bond with people above all else, as opposed to Crotha, who honors the truth above all else. And they come into conflict. They kind of used to butt heads a lot because her virtue and his virtue don't always align necessarily.
Right.
So they figure out how to wake her up by touching her with one of the stones that came from Valerian's tomb. They touch her on the back of the neck.
Another super Resident Evil-y kind of puzzle.
Yeah. And she wakes up and she's there, and her only job is to like watch over Valerian. And she even's like, she's almost like, oh, you two can go now. I got this.
Right. I relieve you of your duties.
And they're like, no, we're going to stay. So Valerian and Philicina are humans. They are alive.
Yes.
And Ferranos and Crotha are undead. So now we got kind of a mixed party going on here.
Yeah, we got a mixed bag.
So, they continue on their merry way. Valerian gives Ferranos a ring.
Yes. Which Ferranos kind of like, it feels familiar to him. Like
he's like, yeah, this seems like something I'd wear.
This seems right. Yeah. This is so me. This is my aesthetic.
Like,
I don't know if you saw my Pinterest boards,
but
I am all
there's Jonesy. He jumped away.
Yeah. He's pacing.
Rings and cowboy boots. That's how I imagine Ferranos.
Absolutely. Perfect. I like him already.
He's a nearly skeletal man with a top hat and a staff and cowboy boots and rings, and he's ready to go. It's not a reference to anything. I'm just making up an image.
I was about to say, I'm like, did I miss something? Where is that from? You're just making your own mythology here.
I'm making my own mythology now at this point.
I like it.
They continue heading east because that is the direction where they feel like they need to go. And basically, Crotha and Ferranos are like, hey, are those two fucking? And
right. Is that a thing? Is that what's happening?
Was I imagining that? And Crotha's like, oh no, they're fucking all right.
Oh yeah, that's happening.
That's happening.
we better go like make ourselves scarce like right now.
Yeah. So they do. They go and they try to get some food while they're taking care of their business. And Ferranos tries to feed Valerian, and she's like, no, that's peasant food.
That's right. That's right. And Valerian, to his credit, is like, no, I'll eat that. I've eaten that before. I like that. That's good. She's like,
I'll eat
it's beneath you.
It's fine. And she's
do you know what isn't beneath you to eat though, Valerian? What I've got in my pants.
Damn straight.
And then the souls got very dark. And wet, if you know what I mean.
We went from Dark Souls to Wet Souls.
Wet Souls,
which is the porn parody of Dark Souls.
Moist Souls.
Moist. Damp Souls.
Oh, there it is. There it is. It was right there. It's right there. Where's my fucking thesaurus? God damn it.
Damp Souls.
Damp Souls.
Yeah. So, and all this time they're like being real touchy with each other. Like, it's like she's putting her hand on him. He's putting her hand on her. It's a thing.
It's a thing.
It's Dark Souls, baby. Forget about it. They let people. There's only they're literally like nearly the last people on Earth at this point.
Yeah, at this point, they may not
with
have
working
been
circulatory working circulatory systems.
Right,
I might
add. They might know each other. They might not. It's just at this point they're like, this might be our only chance. Let's just enjoy this.
So they get to a town with a bunch of people who are pretty worn out and weathered, and there's a big statue in the center of town.
Yes.
And
made out of solid gold.
Yeah. It's made out of solid gold. There's a statue of a man named Celeric. He is King Celeric, and he is one of Balarion's brothers, from what we can tell. One of the children of the original king.
Yeah.
And now we are in like the first of the three kingdoms, I assume, that got created from after. Like, what I'm guessing is Panir died. It got passed to his three kids. The three kids kind of split up the land in their own way. And Celeric is the first one that they get to, or his lands rather. It is a fucked up little town where these people are brainwashed to give everything that they make. And like, that's the thing about the town is like, they're not hurting for anything.
No.
Like, they produce so much food and they give it all away to the king because they love him so much.
Yeah. Like the guy comes by, like the tax collector for all intents and purposes, comes by, and they like bring out all the grain and all this, the leather work they've been doing, all this shit. And he says, well, I'll be taking 60% of this, and they're horrified. And at first you're like, oh, cool. You know,
he's taking too much. And they're like, no, take all of it.
Take all of it, because we don't want the king to think that we don't love him 100%.
We don't deserve it. He does.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the auditor is like, I'm going to leave you with some. Because it's a law now. We gotta actually.
Yeah, he literally says that. He's like, yeah, I would actually, but it's against the law. Yeah.
Basically, and nobody has names, and you don't get a name unless you earn a name in this country. The town also doesn't have a name. It has a number, and towns don't get names unless they earn it. So even the auditor that's just his title. The auditor does not have a name. And we find out that the people that are allowed, the only people allowed in the capital are people with names, because if you have a name, it means you have status.
Yes.
And that because they introduced themselves as having names, everybody assumed that they were higher status than them. Like the auditor, from the auditor on down, everybody's like, well, clearly these are the main characters.
Right. We're just NPCs.
And we're just NPCs.
But remember, guys, fantasy doesn't have metaphors.
No. Does not have metaphors.
None.
So they figure out that this is they need to get to the capital. They need to talk to the king. That one point, the capital's name was like, the name of the capital has been changed since the last time Crotha was alive. Mm-hmm. It was like Gerasa, and now it's Draxon or something like that. It was just like a subtle change in the spelling of it. They get hitch a ride with the auditor, and the auditor's like, well, I'll take you in that direction, but I am not allowed in the capital because I do not have a name. And they're like, okay, well, let's get going. And that's pretty much the end of the first third of the book.
Yeah. Yeah. That last chapter or two, that's actually, we'll get into this here, but that was actually the first bit of like lore that I thought was really intriguing and interesting. Like this whole city dedicated to this king in this way. We're starting to get into some interesting stuff here.
Yeah.
But it's taken a minute.
It's taking quite a long time. So far, this book is kind of boring. In terms of what it is. I mean, the writing is fine. You know, it's Michael Stackpole, and he's gonna write yourself a little, some really good descriptions in there. but it doesn't feel like, here's what it feels like. Not Dark Souls. It feels like, here's what it feels like Michael Stackpole had a fantasy story already written and then grafted some Dark Souls elements onto it.
Yeah. Yeah. There were a couple of moments that made me think a little bit of Shadowkeep in that kind of generic fantasy.
The generic fantasy setting.
And we're gathering, and here's the thing, and correct me if I'm wrong, but one of the things that always fascinated me about the Dark Souls world and what you saw in it was that it was a very lonely place. It was a very, very lonely place filled with hostiles, and the friendlies, so to speak, were few and far between. And in the first third
most
of
of
the
them
book,
were nuts. Like they had lost their minds from being so alone, you know?
So you felt like you're one of the only sane people in this world. And now, so we've got 4 characters, none of which are really all that interesting.
There's not a single one of the main characters is interesting. Maybe what's her name, Phila, whatever. She might have some teeth to her, but otherwise, I'm not interested in any of the main characters. Yeah, Ferranos might have something interesting. Maybe it'll come back around that he was never supposed to get out because for like a very specific reason, like he was the bad guy all along. Whatever. Right. But I don't That was like a single breadcrumb in the first chapter that really hasn't been touched back on in the 12 chapters.
We haven't revisited that. No.
I think there is something to be said about, there's not enough loneliness in it. And there is one of the things that I like best. I'm a big Dark Souls 2 defender. Mm-hmm. A lot of people don't like it. I love Dark Souls 2. I especially love the opening cinematic of Dark Souls 2. Whereas Dark Souls 1 and 3 are more about the world and the state of the world and these powerful forces, these lords and all that are fighting to bend what remains of this world to their whim. Dark Souls 2 opening cinematic is about your character and about how everything will fade. You're going to die over and over again, and everything you know, everything you love is going to fade. And it's like it has this like the guy, your character is standing in a room with his wife and his child, and as they say this, like their faces start to like melt away into like this like ethereal like mist. Like the idea, the concept of that the undeath is the primary motivating factor in the Dark Souls games, is that this undead, it's a curse. Right. And so far it doesn't feel like it's a curse. It's a curse that because the more you die, the closer you become to losing everything, to becoming the hollow that has lost every bit of memory, to touch, to go back to your touch points in your life. They're all faded away. And that's the thing that's missing from this book, is that it's less about the fear of losing yourself. It isn't there. That fear of losing yourself is not, that's the stakes. Is losing, you die and you wake up as an undead, and now instead of just the sweet embrace of death, you might be punished with cruelly decaying over hundreds of years and losing every bit of memory of every person that you ever loved. Right. That is the curse of the dark soul. That is the curse of the first sin. It's all this stuff, and it's super heavy, and it's just not here. Yeah, and
here I didn't get any of that. Like,
that's the thing. That
feels like another fantasy race.
And that's a through line that carries you through the main 3 games. And I'm not saying you can't just tell another story set in the Dark Souls world. which that's a lot of time as you're going through Dark Souls, you have a whole bunch of subplots that are not necessarily about kindling the flame or whatever. You have in Dark Souls 2, you have a character who has traveled from a faraway land, and she is just there to try to find her brother before she forgets who her brother is.
Wow. Okay.
And it's like it is this really heavy story. It's one of the most beautiful stories in the Dark Souls trilogy, and that's the kind of stuff that's the good stuff in Dark Souls, and you can really get away with a lot with telling a story of introspection into who you are and why you are and your place in the grand scheme of things, but then take it and make it super personal. You could do that. You can make this big cursed world into a very personal thing. And right now, what we're getting in the book, as you said, is for, a D&D party filled with some people who, aren't that into role playing.
Yeah. Human, elf, dwarf, undead,
they like the combat, they like the combat part of D&D. They don't really role play that much. They don't get into their characters.
Right.
So that's kind of the vibe I'm getting right now in the book.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know a lot of, I've watched a few, who's the YouTuber?
Vatividya, who does a lot of the story summaries.
I've seen some of those. I know how deep this stuff goes. And I think so far, if people are hoping that this is a novel that's going to be connecting elements of that already established mythology and that sort of thing, it's not feeling yet like that's what this book is.
Yeah. And honestly, I mean, that's the thing is like, and as I might have said, you don't have to even get into the mythology, but you do have to get into the themes.
Right.
And the themes are very they're not here.
No.
They felt like they could have been in chapter 1. Like chapter 1 gets off to a really strong start with him trying to remember what it is to be alive. I was like, oh, this is the good shit.
Yeah.
And then
there's some really wonderful introspection in that first chapter. It's really interesting.
Then it just starts kind of slowly meandering to like there's a lot of talk, like walking and talking. It's like, come on, this isn't Aaron Sorkin's Dark Souls.
That's exactly what it feels like. And the other thing that I wanted more of was like, I was hoping more of the exploration aspect of it because it's such a huge series of worlds and all kinds of like, different landscapes and places and stuff. And there's like that Indiana Jones vibe of like, we're going to this exotic locale and going to that one. And we do get some. You briefly talked about them going away and finding food for the humans, and they find some. He finds some grain, and he's not sure if this is going to be edible, but he kind of describes it and takes it back to see if anyone can recognize it. And I was like, that was a moment I wrote a note. I was like, I'd like more of this, like more of building up. We get like there are mountains over here, and there's this over there, but I don't know. It doesn't thrill me on the same level that. I feel like I almost feel like we need Urban Weight to come in and punch up
some of this, like the landscape descriptions.
Yeah, like
world. Michael Stackpole is a very, very good writer. He's written a lot of great things, but. This is not, I don't know. It doesn't feel like his bailiwick necessarily.
No, I feel like actually this might be Stackpole out of his depths.
Yeah.
which is kind of insane to say because like I have a lot of respect for that man. He's a great writer. He's a very important writer, but you don't get the impression that he knows a whole lot about
he doesn't necessarily
mythology.
He might not be grasping the themes. And as we've always found out in the past, that might be a function of the client, that could be, I forget, From Software is owned by a conglomerate, like a magazine conglomerate or something like that. Yeah. And it might just be something like they wanted a book. They hired
they want something generic and easy for people to.
It's like let's get one of the biggest fantasy writers, like English fantasy writers that we can get that'll work for hire. They got Michael Stackpole, and they're like, here, write this is it. And that's like, that could easily be what happened.
Absolutely.
From what we found out with how these books kind of come to be sometimes, that could easily be what happened, where it was just a higher up from the, I think it's Katakawa Corporation, which is the one there. That's the company that owns From Software. Is like, yeah, what property we have that could be turned into a media tie-in.
Right. Okay. That's guaranteed to get us a little bit of cash, you know. And it's like,
right.
All right. No, I don't want you to go into deep, heavy literary themes here. I want you to make me a fantasy novel that
a fantasy novel that's
can read.
Make me a 300-page fantasy novel that's called Dark Souls.
Pretty much. Pretty much. And it's disappointing, but Lord, that is how this works most of the time. And
we'll see. We're obviously going to finish the book, and we're going to we will tarry forth into the and that's the other thing, is like, all the Dark Souls NPCs that you meet are fucking weird and have their own little quirks, and it's like, give me something. And they laugh a lot. They do a lot of weird laughing.
It's a way less weird book than I expected it to
be.
It
needed to
really
be.
Expected some.
That's
weirdness.
it. That's really it. Is the book needed to crank its weirdness up?
Yeah,
to 11. You know.
It's a shame. I really was expecting a far more bizarre kind of journey than the one we're getting so far. But we've seen things get turned around in the past. Fingers crossed. Fingers
crossed it'll turn around. I mean, normally we get a lot of strong start week endings. Maybe this will be the reverse, where it's
as always, we'd love to be proven wrong.
We would love to be proven wrong.
Yes.
And this has gotten more relevant, the voice I do for this segment, because we're just gonna be a remake, even though they changed the guy's voice. It's a different voice actor. But Phil, what are you playing?
Oh, well, I'm so glad you asked. I've been playing 2 games in particular in the past couple of weeks. I recently beat Strange Horticulture.
Okay.
Really interesting little indie game, very witchy game, kind of a strategy. Basically you inherit this horticulturalist's kind of store, very, very witch store, and you're meeting all the people in the town, and you've got plants, and you can go all over the map to discover new plants and identify them based on descriptions. You've got a book that you have to actually flip through to read, like sometimes people identify it by the Latin name, so you got to flip through, find it in its Latin name. Sometimes they'll say what it's meant to do, and you have to read up, find the plants that do this or cure that, and then you have to label them. It's very it's very labor intensive in a fun kind of a way.
Yeah.
It's really neat. It took me about 6 hours or so to beat. If you like those kinds of strategies, little puzzle kind of logic puzzle sorts of games, I highly recommend it. It was really interesting. Didn't take me very long, and they're like 8 or 9 endings or something. So I'm probably going to come back to it at some point and try it again. So I really enjoyed that. On the other hand, I've also been playing Warhammer 40K. What do you fucking call it? It's got like the longest Chaos Gate Demon Hunters.
Okay.
Which is basically Warhammer XCOM. And I'd heard a lot of mixed reviews about it, and I was flabbergasted because I was like, Jesus, it's like, I'm not a huge Grey Knights fan, but it's Warhammer 40K XCOM. How do you miss that? How do you drop the ball on that? And the short answer is, you don't make it very interesting. It's just, there isn't a ton of variety in it,
right?
And it doesn't give you the level of variety and shifts that XCOM gives you. For example, most missions are basically the same. The bad guys are basically the same. The good guys are basically the same, and it doesn't do a great job of explaining certain customizable aspects of it. And even when you do customize the shit out of it, which you can do, your guys all kind of look the same, and
Sure.
it lacks a lot of the charm that Firaxis's XCOM and XCOM 2 has.
Right.
I've put about 9 or 10 hours into it, and I'm sure I'm going to play it a little more, but I think I've reached the point where it's just like, okay, I know what this is doing, and it's a shame. I would love to see some DLC where they kind of tighten it up and give us a little more,
something more to chew on.
Right. I would like that, because it's not a cheap game for an indie game. It's like $45.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah, I got it because you know me. I'm going to play every 40K game.
It's a 40K game, and
right. What was I supposed to do? Yeah. But I cannot in good faith recommend it based on that price.
Sure.
Like if you can get it for like $20 or something like that, then yeah, I'd say it's worth a whirl just to see if it's, because I've read some people say they really loved it.
Yeah.
But at $45, that's
it's a little much.
It's a little much. So, what are you playing, Kevin?
Oh boy. Well, I mean, I have been playing a whole mess of mid-tier first-person shooters, but we're not going to get into those on this podcast. You'll have to listen to those on Bullet Time. But something that wasn't mid-tier that I finished recently was Titanfall 2.
I liked that game.
The campaign for Titanfall 2, so good. Such a good game. It'll make you cry by the end. There will be tears. What else? I started trying to play Pathologic 2.
Okay. Wow. All right.
I put about 4 hours into that bad boy. God, that's a tough game to do. To just play. It's tough on. So once you get into the groove of it, you're like, all right, well, it's just a first person. It has like some survival aspects to it where you gotta eat, you gotta drink, you gotta keep your health up and all that stuff. And you just do missions for people. But it's caked in this very thick layer of folklore that feels almost impenetrable, because you're coming into it and there's no like touchstone for the folklore in Pathologic 2. It's just there and it's dense. Jonesy, are you gonna knock something over back there? You look.
He is on the thinnest of ice, Jonesy.
He's just like, I'm gonna climb on these stacks and I think they're gonna hold me.
It's probably going to work out, or he's going to die under 40 tons of RPG books.
Yeah.
Those are all hardcover, you idiot. They will kill you.
Come on, cat.
He's his father's son.
He is his father's son. So, yeah, Pathologic 2, I've been playing a little bit of that. I beat Faith.
Oh, yes. Tell me about that.
The Unholy Trilogy.
Yeah.
So I played beginning to end. I played chapter 1, chapter 2, and then went into chapter 3. Really good. I mean, as a single experience, it'll take you about like 6 hours or so to get through all 3 chapters.
Right.
And that's just me like kind of going through and rolling credits on each. Wasn't super completionist about getting all the notes or all the endings or what have you. And in Faith chapter 3, I found out I missed like, it's like the game is actually probably twice the length that I thought it was, because there's a whole bunch of more stuff in each location that you go to that you can do that I didn't even realize necessarily. But yeah, it's a good time, and I really enjoyed how it wraps up, because I think it's supposed to be the last of the Faith games.
Yeah, he's got to be moving on to new projects at this point.
Yeah, I think he probably wants to just be wrapped up on it.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much what I've been playing. And and then I just decided to install Red Dead Redemption 2 on my Steam Deck.
I saw that. How does that play on the Steam Deck?
Beautifully. Smooth as butter.
That's freaking wild. And it feels good to play and everything.
Feels good to play too. So I can just sit there in my bed and I can walk around and the great wilderness of the Grizzly Mountains.
Oh, that game is so stupidly beautiful. Like
it is. You know what? If they did a Red Dead Redemption 2 or first one novelization, Urban Wait.
Oh, without question. Without question. Oh, yeah, he'd be the guy. He'd be after the Far Cry Absolution.
I just I can like feel it. I can feel his descriptions of like the landscape already.
Yeah.
It's like wrapping around me like a warm blanket.
It would have to be like 1,200 pages long, but goddamn, yeah, absolutely.
John Marston walked out of the small house, looking out over the plains as tumbleweeds blew down from the northern mountains.
It'd be so good. I'd read that thing. Oh my God, that'd be great.
But yeah, that's it. And that'll do it for tonight's episode.
Hell yeah.
If you want to follow us on social media, I don't know how much longer I'm going to be on Twitter. Given its new owner. But yeah, follow us on social media at PixelitPod on both Twitter and Instagram. And go to our website, pixelitpod.com, where we post every episode with a transcript of the episode. So go ahead and check that out. If you can do us a solid and rate us 5 stars on the podcast platform that you listen to us on, that'll be Apple Podcasts or Spotify or even Good Pods. It would do a world of good for our ratings on those websites. So that'll do it for tonight's episode. Have a good evening, everyone.
Bye. Say bye, Jonesy.
Meow.
Little bastard.